So I am super excited to be here. The lights are really bright, but very cool to have the stage here in the middle of the show floor, Event Tech Live in the US. Just kind of awesome. Really excited to be here with Jake. I don't have, Jake, your full written bio, so you can give us a little bit of info. But for the audience, Jake Runyon, Senior Event Technologist. Really excited to chat about what this role is, what it means for the industry, and excited to get your questions as well. So we'll do a little bit of back and forth, but please submit your questions and we'll leave some time at the end as well. So Jake.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Really excited to be here. Thank you to Event Tech Live for inviting me here to be a speaker today. Quick little background of me. I started in the industry in 2018 at SpotMe. Spent about 3.5 years there before moving over to my current job at Meetings and Incentives Worldwide, and been in there since fall of 2021.
Wonderful. Well, if anyone wants to learn more about you, of course, they can look up your bio, connect on LinkedIn, etc. Let's dive right into the content. So thinking about an event technologist, it probably means a little bit different things to different people. So if you can give our audience a little bit of information about what the event technologist role is specifically at Meetings and Incentives Worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first I'd like to start by saying what we're not, and that's an IT person. That happens a lot on site. Get people coming up asking if you're in IT. I am not. So at Meetings and Incentives, we're still event professionals, and I like to think of us also as consultants. So a lot of times the process is we will get on a call with a client that wants to use a mobile app of some kind. Really at that point, it's trying to figure out based on their needs, what technology is going to be best for them. Once we decide what technology we're using, after that, it kind of moves into the build of it, talking on calls with the client, figuring out what they want to include, and also it being able to provide some other things they can add to the app as well. Based on if their key focus is networking, how can we help build their events and make the event app really unique? Well, maybe we can do some contact exchange through the app, or discussion boards where people are really kind of sharing their thoughts and ideas with each other. And then, of course, we're analyzing all the data we collect. So after the event, scheduling a debrief call where we go through the high analytics, sending analytics to the client afterwards, especially for events that are kind of repeating throughout the year, or it's the same every year, kind of so they can take a look, what was really successful this year, where can they improve, where can we maybe even just eliminate some things that are not being useful in the current app build. So I think a lot of times sum it up, we connect to the clients to identify their needs, build out the app, and then look through those analytics.
It sounds like you're a little bit of the magic behind the scenes that makes events come together.
That's right. Yeah. So, I don't think it's appropriate for me to say I'm an event planner, but, we have to know a lot about what goes into the event still, especially when it comes to something like table assignments. If they want to have table assignments in the app, you kind of have to still have an idea of the layout of the room, how many tables are in there, or, how many, are they crescent rounds? What are they? What are the type of tables? So we're still very actively involved in the overall event planning. But yeah, we're behind the scenes working the magic.
That's good. We can all use a little more magic in our events for sure. So the role or the title of event technologist is relatively new. Certainly there's been a few people around for a while doing this, but we've been seeing it more and more. From your perspective, really kind of how did the role come about? Like really what drove this role?
Yeah, I think, it could be just as simple as technology obviously is always evolving. And so, and I always like to approach it that event technologists, especially in terms of mobile apps, is that, it was an ecological need as well. That's one of my favorite things to say on site is, when people come for the paper agenda, tell them that we're saving trees. We're not using a paper agenda. And so, really, I think it's as simple as just technology is evolving. And so there was just a need to simplify it, save the paper. And that also helps out with instant changes. Instead of having to print off 500 copies of an agenda now, again, you just make the change quickly in the app. Everybody just refreshes. It's all done. You're not asking everybody to come back to the desk, get a new paper agenda, toss out the old one. So yeah, I think it was just as simple as technology.
That's a big thing, sustainability. And then you're right, speed of execution, speed of changes. I think that it's amazing to think what technology can enable. Well, with that in mind, and actually see somebody, one of my next question was going to be a little bit about how you kind of stay up to date. How do you know what's out there? And somebody actually already asked that question. As an expert, how do you have preferred tools? I think you told me that each one of your event technologists at M&I works on a specific platform, but as a whole, how do you stay up to date on what's happening? How do you stay on that cutting edge?
Yeah, I think there's, multiple things, things from webinars, from client, products that we already use. There's webinars, newsletters. Internally we chat through Teams as well. Every time there's something that happens that's newsworthy, we share those news articles with our team. Especially if it's a competitor of ours getting bought out by somebody else. So that's kind of the biggest way is just, checking LinkedIn, seeing what articles are coming out, subscribing to those newsletters, webinars, signing up for those when you have some downtime to join those webinars. Again, it's really helpful for the products that we already use, kind of figure out like what is the new features that they're coming out with, or maybe what are they removing that they didn't see too much use for. So that's kind of where I really have the focus, is just using the tools that are available to me through LinkedIn and then my internal team, and then through the subscriptions that I sign up for the products I use.
And I would imagine events like this.
That's right. Yes, exactly.
Well, so it's interesting. So you come to an event like this, you get to see all of the different vendors that are here, review what's happening that's new with them. I've noticed, I've followed Julius Solaris. He's written several times on LinkedIn, kind of stating that there's not a lot of innovation in event tech these days and in the event platforms. I'm curious from your perspective, what do you see that's missing, or really, right, what are the opportunities that you see out there or that you hear from your clients, things that like they'd love to see? Like, where can the industry be driving that innovation?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I would agree with that. I don't think there's been a lot of innovation lately, at least. And, I think with that, I know we talked about this on a pre-call, was that I think a lot of times what should be the focus now is really utilizing the features that are available to us. There's always, minor changes, or, they always improve features and event apps constantly, which is great. And I think that's, for me with clients, that's a lot of times I get on calls, demo calls. They're like, well, what's new? I work, to your point, you mentioned that my teams at M&I, we all have like our own specific apps that we focus on. For me, a lot of times that app is SpotMe. And so, SpotMe is always giving demo or updates about new products and features. And a lot of times when I get on demo calls, clients are always asking like, well, what's new at SpotMe? And it's, and I think what biggest time is just like, well, let's focus on what you're not utilizing already. A lot of people don't use, certain features, and it's trying to get them on board using that. And again, we might talk about this later, but it's, I guess, of course, it's always based on the audience that, we're building the event for. Sometimes there's not a need for activity challenge if it's about a bunch of senior leaders that are just going to be there to collaborate with each other, versus like a sales meeting where activity challenge is a little bit more relevant to what they're doing there. So I think a lot of times I just always lead those calls with just talking about, let's focus on what we have available to us. Innovation is always exciting. Getting something new, getting something exciting is that's what we're here. That's why we work in tech, to see what's the latest and newest that's coming out. But for me, I like to take a step back and just focus on what we have available to us and making sure that we're utilizing to the fullest extent.
I think that's a really good point. We definitely want to push the industry forward, and you say continue to innovate. But if customers are not using the tools or the feature sets that exist today, then adding new features and always chasing that shiny object doesn't really help. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because we did talk about it in our pre-call, and you said sometimes when a particular customer doesn't use features, then they don't have a great event, and then there's blowback on the platform because they didn't use features, but they didn't necessarily want to use the features because of all these other reasons. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, a lot of times it's, like to your point, clients a lot of times get on calls and they're very excited like about the features available to them. If we talk about activity challenge, they're very excited about gamification within the app, but they, eventually either through the months of planning that we do, it can fall to the wayside. And so and then they're not utilizing the platform to its fullest extent. And so I think that's where being a consultant in the industry really helpful as well, because there is the clients we're working with, they have a lot on their plate. They have to worry about the whole event. Whereas me personally, I'm just worried about the app. So where can I help out with that? And that's, building out things in the app already, or be able to demo them. Like, okay, you don't have time to think about all the activities you want to do in gamification. Well, me being in the industry for a long time and seeing multiple different gamification examples, I can pick 10 things that are standard that I see across a lot of events, offer that to you, get a shell built out, half the work's already done for you. Now it's just this point, it's kind of just, thinking of some unique verbiage for yourself. So it's really, making sure during those calls that you're just really pushing everything available to you. Because the worst thing is, somebody's paying, decent amount of money for an event app, and then all of us, the only thing they're using it for is the agenda and speakers list. That's not getting your money's worth. And so it's through those calls. And I know a lot of people probably are on enough calls during the day. They don't want to be on more calls. But to me, I think it's very critical and important to be on as many client calls as you can. So, to figure out their needs through planning. My thing when I get on kickoff calls with clients is always to identify, even if I know about the event, I like to just ask them again, what is your event about? What are your top 3 goals? Who is your audience? Because that helps then for me to figure out where I can kind of shift the conversation. If they're telling me again, like, networking is a big deal, here's some features in the app that we can do at a no additional cost, but it's really going to enhance the app. So that way at the end, when we're going through analytics, it's not, everybody just looked at the agenda and that's it. People spent less than a minute in the app. They just really want to know where they're going. So yeah, I think a lot of times it's just being present on all the calls as possible, making sure that they're utilizing to the best of their ability, and then pointing out where you think they're not utilizing more. For some reason, I've been seeing a lot where clients want to do surveys outside of the app platform that we have available to us, and it's kind of just letting them know, like, we have that capability in the app. You're paying for it already. Let's put it in there. We can send out through a notification. You can get those instant results right away. It's so that you avoid those blowbacks at a debrief call.
Well, so you do the work. You find out from folks they care about activities, etc. You build out that shell, as you said. So what stops customers from doing it? Like, what do you see happen, whether it's something like gamification or polls for speakers, things like that? What do you see stops them from actually implementing the feature?
Yeah, I think the simple answer is just time. It's really time. It really always goes back to their time. Like I said earlier, like, we get on calls early enough, they're very excited about all the possibilities, and then it comes down to crunch time, and they just completely put it by the wayside. They're like, well, let's just scrap it. I don't have time to go back to the speakers, figure out where their polling questions are. We told them the deadline for the polling questions was this date. They're already a week behind. Let's just go ahead and scrap it. Same with the gamification. We're building it out. Even if I get a good base going, they're like, we can't think of anything else. It's not that big of a deal. Let's just scrap it. So yeah, I think it's just really time.
I think that's really got to be a tough part of the job, because you are supposed to make it happen and you're supposed to make the app amazing, but you can't control the time and the priorities and like where it kind of sits for folks. And if it gets pushed to the wayside and they don't have a good experience, blow back on the platform, it's got to be very hard for you. It's got to be a little bit like herding cats.
Yeah, and it is. And there's times where I don't talk to the client much, and it's just really, I'm getting fed the information from my internal planner, and I'm just making the most basic app there is. And in terms of workload, it's easy, I guess. It's easy enough for me. I'm not putting out everything I can into it. I'm available now to work on other projects, but it is always kind of like it's just kind of like it's disappointing. You want to make sure that you're utilizing the technology to their fullest extent. So especially when you do have those calls where you go through all of the features available to you, to them, and then they come back, they're like, we're just going to do it for a standard agenda, speakers, attendee list. Then, you can do your best. You can try. Like I said, I think it's that in this role, it's kind of almost like we're consultants, because a lot of my time is spent encouraging clients, like, well, hey, I think there's a need here for this, or like, I think you can really enhance the app by doing this. So when they say no, it does. It kind of hurts, like you said. It's just disappointing. It's and it just, and at the very least, a lot of times too, especially for newer clients, when they're like, we want to keep it bare bones, pretty simple. I always, at the very least, if I try, and I can't get anybody that wants to do anything more, at the very least, I tell them like, hey, well, they usually sign a multi-event contract, so at least they have a contract in place. Okay, you use the app, people liked it, your audience liked it. Let's now for the next event figure out where we can make this even better.
That's a good thing to do. Then you literally kind of step them along and get them to add a feature for each next event. That makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like you said you try to get on as many calls as possible, try to be that consultant. And it sounds like you're also partnering with an event planner on your side who works with the customer. So I guess I'm curious, how do you feel that your clients really leverage you for your experience? Because I imagine you have produced hundreds of ads. So do you find that people are really looking for your guidance? And how do you balance that, giving the strategy versus being the doer?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think for me, it's 50-50 almost. There's certainly clients I've worked with plenty of times now that even if I'm not assigned to their events, they'll reach out in an email or something that like, hey, Jake, we know you always provide us with the most consistent, up-to-date information. You're very honest about what works and what doesn't work for our events. So I do have clients that reach out and be like, we want to leverage on your expertise. And then, like, to your point, they could come to us with, they have everything mapped out. They know exactly what they want to do. They just want to see the feasibility of it. Or they could just come here like, this is our idea. Now we just need you to kind of map out how that works. And to be honest, that's part of my favorite part of my job is that collaboration process with clients, especially when it comes to things like gamification. Figuring out, they want to do a scavenger hunt, using QR codes, like, okay, so now where are we going to put those QR codes throughout the event? You have a networking break, or we can put it on the back of a sign, make it a little challenging for people to find. So yeah, I do think that a lot of times people come with me with leaning on my expertise, and that's where I'm always, or not always, but get pulled into demo calls a lot. That's usually not something that we always do. And at MNIW, as the event technologist, we're not always necessarily demoing the technology. But there is times that we do get on demo calls, especially for clients that we've worked with in the past, but they have new stakeholders that are using the app for the first time. They don't know the capabilities of the app. So we get on those calls and kind of go through, here's everything. It's, again, going back to like, here's everything available to you. And then there's other times too, where you don't have anybody reaching out at all. And it's just like, they don't have a plan, and they don't really think about, leveraging the experts that we have. They're just, we want to use the app, and here's basic information, you build it out.
I think it's great that there's so much expertise out there. So especially as there's more people in roles like yours, I think one of the smartest things planners can do is really leverage your expertise. So take the time to watch the demo, not just look at new features, and plan ahead. So as much time as possible to see how they can meet your goals. So that makes sense. So you've mentioned, let's see, kind of like activities. You mentioned scavenger hunts, you've mentioned polls. What are the features that you think can have the most impact on the success of an event? And if there's a specific use case, by all means, kind of add that in there. But features that have the most impact that just aren't getting used enough. Yeah,
I think the biggest ones, and I think I touched on this a little bit too, is like discussion boards. I think those go a long way, especially, again, depending on the event you're doing. For me, discussion boards, I try to I pitch them in two different ways. One with it being, content related. You want just different discussion boards that are content related based on the why they're there on site. One discussion board can be on the importance, of the event technologist. Another one could be on registration. You can have all various different topics, or you can have it more fun, fun driven. What's your favorite vacation destination? Share pictures of your pets. So I think discussion boards that link also back to gamification are to like the biggest driver a lot of times, because you see, especially when the attendees are incentivized, they use the app a lot more. I think one feature that not used as much, and I think it's a good one that could be used more, is matchmaking. And I know matchmaking is used for a variety of different mobile apps, but for me, speaking Spot Me terms, I know it's not used that much, but I like to pitch it up because it's kind of a 2-for-1. I try to, when I pitch it for Spot Me, I kind of pitch it for two modules, two features really. First being matchmaking. Again, a lot of times with spot meets matchmaking, it doesn't tell you what you matched. It just gives you a percentage. And I always like to tee that up to clients, is that this is a perfect opportunity for the attendees to message the person they get the highest match with. And then during that conversation, they're messaging each other. You can use another module called the meetings module, where you can schedule a one-on-one or three person, four person. I think it's up to 20 people now. You can schedule a meeting on your own. And so that's kind of, utilizing two features all in one. And I think the matchmaking is fun. Again, that could be content driven, asking why they're here, what they're hoping to gain from being here today, or it could be fun things again, like how do you like to spend your free time? Where would you rather be on vacation, the beach or in the mountains, hiking? What do you like to do? So for my company, I'm building out our summit event, the summit event that we do every year. I'm building out the app for it. So we're trying to figure out ways too where we can, use all the features available to us. And matchmaking was one I just pitched that the team was really excited about. So I'm hoping that us using it internally for an upcoming event, that the rest of our team, the people that, do reach out to work with the clients first to get that contract signed, we are hoping that they see the relevance of that feature and they can start using it more for their own events.
I think that's really interesting because I've been in and around platforms for quite a long time, and there was a time where everyone added matchmaking. It had to be a check the box feature. So you get these RFPs and people say, okay, well, do you offer matchmaking? Yes. But I think you're right. Even in my experience, the number of times that a customer uses it isn't very often. And then when they do, it's often turning it on and not doing anything with it. So
Yep.
I think, again, if we're thinking about how to help anybody producing events, it's don't just check the box. Like, go back to what you said, talk to your event technologist or whoever it is on your team that understands these things and get some of this expertise on how to make it happen.
Yeah, and I think, on top of that too, a lot of times, and that's what's great about using event apps in general, is just the real-time analytics you can get. And so I'm always, when I'm on site for events, looking at the analytics, figuring out where people are spending their time. Because if we do have an event that's using something like matchmaking, I can easily look up to see how many people have actually submitted that form or that little survey, however you want to categorize it. How many people have filled that out? If we're not seeing a lot of people that are completing it, we can send a notification out to the whole attendees, or we can figure out who hasn't submitted it, send a personalized notification to them saying, like, please be sure to go through, complete your matchmaking form, and that applies to every feature. If we're not seeing people visit a specific document, especially like a security risk document, a PDF that they added to the app, that they're telling everybody, please be sure to read this when you go into the app. Well, then we can utilize, the analytics, the notifications, really just making sure we're pushing the attendees to, the core features that the client's paying for and they want to be used. So I think that, again, that's just kind of off topic, but a very important part about, having somebody as an event or using event apps and having an event technologist involved. They can tell you real-time information to help you improve your, the app that you're using. So I always like to just refer to my analytics when I'm on site, kind of push that engagement further.
Well, I'm glad you said analytics, because it sounds like data really drives a lot of the recommendations that you're going to make for your clients. And I imagine it's a lot harder to ignore if you've got the number.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's even too as simple as figure out who's downloaded the app or not, and sending out emails to remind people that haven't. So yeah, I think everything in our industry is very analytics based. Because again, even after the event, those analytics will drive the future events. Kind of going back to what I opened up with a little bit ago, where, if a feature is not used enough, especially if it's something they paid extra for, as much as it's, paying somebody as an event technologist to tell them, let's scrap that feature, especially the sales team, they're not going to like that, that we're taking money off the table. But really it is, making sure they're using everything that they need to be using and not, having extra fluff in there just for the sake of having fluff. So yeah, it always goes back to analytics, driving how we can improve that next event. Like not a lot of people spent time looking at the resources available to us. And even though we put, 20 plus resources in the app, how do we make sure that they're being utilized? Presentations, presentation documents that are in the app, PDFs of them. If that's the big goal, is that people download those or even view them, we have the information available, make sure people are using that. So yeah, always a big component of using analytics.
That's and we're hot. She's good.
Yeah, I don't know if your mic is actually working right now.
About thinking about where technology's headed. And so,
Did clear and then about it's on.
sorry, it's hot as piss.
You want to try again?
we try that again. Let's try a new one. How about now? Oh, there, I can hear myself. Okay, let's try that again.
Got a little distracting with the big announcement there as well.
What's going on out here? So, thinking about technology that's kind of driving a lot of change, right? AI is the hot topic. So I'm curious to know, as in your role as an event technologist, how much is AI coming to the forefront, right? Is it something that's impacting you today? You see it helping you in your role, and then your customer, the event planners and whatnot, in their role?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. And actually, my Uber driver last week, as I was going on site for another program, was asking me about my use for how much I use AI building my apps out and how beneficial it could be. So that was a fun conversation to have at 5 a.m. with my Uber driver on the way to the airport. I think for me currently, we're not really pushing the use of AI right now. Again, referencing SpotMe, I know that they are pushing some AI generated images in their email templates, which has been really cool. I think that's really the only case right now where I've seen it be used. For us, it's of course right now, it would be a security problem for us. It wouldn't be in compliance with our security protocol for us to use AI, but I'm conflicted on it, the idea of using it, because sometimes Chat GPT could be great, especially for even our clients that they don't have the time to figure out how to write out the travel letters or something like that. You could put that information probably into Chat GPT and get a good paragraph of information that you could put in the app. But to me, I think regardless of how far AI ends up going, I think there's always going to be a need for the event technologist. Definitely for on-site purposes, you're going to need somebody there to help out with getting people on the app. You're going to need to be there to help run any interactivity you're using, that would be polling, or if you have a game that's on site, you still want to have somebody there that can help manage it if there's any bug, you run into any bugs. So I think there's a lot of room for AI in the industry, but I think at the end of the day, there's always going to be a need for a person. And me personally, that's again where I get a lot of my joy from my job, is building out the apps itself. Even if it's just me copying and pasting text that somebody sent me and putting into a page, I still, there's formatting that page, figuring out how to make that a little bit look a little, pizzazz it up, in the app versus just copying and pasting text in there. So me personally, I think the event technologist is always going to be a person first job, AI second.
Well, that's good, because we don't want you to lose your job.
Right.
And I think it really plays back to what you talked about, the consultation and strategy that you really need to be focused on. And yes, sometimes you might do a little cut and paste, but if clients are smart, they're going to leverage your expertise and get that consultation from anybody they come across who's got a title of event technologist. So I think one question, we talked a little bit about this earlier, thinking about the audience and kind of building in, adding features and using a lot of tech at events. When is too much tech too much? Can you talk a little bit about the different maybe types of events you run? Maybe it's internal events or not tech savvy audience. I'm not sure what kind of events might fall under that.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as well when you're thinking about building out an event app for an event, is knowing your audience. And I think going back to on a kickoff call, that's where I always like to ask that question about their audience, the attendees that are going to be there. Are they salespeople? Are they, doctors? Who are the attendees? That's knowing that helps for me gauge where we should be really spending a lot of our time in terms of the app build. With I think recently I did an event where we were very QR code heavy, and it was an audience that was skewed toward the older side. And unfortunately, that there wasn't always a printed text explanation of what each QR code did, which if I was responsible for that, I would make sure that I was involved. But I wasn't. So it was, we got a lot of questions from people about like, I don't know what these QR codes do. I thought it did this, and now it's figuring like it's actually doing this. So, there it's like knowing your audience. Like, if it's an older group, no offense, you might want to limit that technology, keep it very simple for them. Make sure, of course, it's, you're, again, utilizing the app to the best of your ability, but not overloading it, jam-packing it with features that are just not going to be applicable to that audience. So, salespeople are always something that's always easy, it's easy for me to suggest gamification with the sales audience. The always competitive people ends up, they take it too seriously at times. They always want to they always look at that leaderboard, seeing where they can climb up. And so, and I just did a virtual event recently where it was all senior leaders. We did do gamification within it, but again, not to take money off the table, but going forward, I don't know if that would be the event that necessarily we need to use gamification, because like their big draw was just to listen to the live streams that we had up in the app. They want to just really use that chat feature to connect with each other, and use polling. That was basically it. They really were just spending most of their day with 10-minute breaks in between for them to get, water, use the restroom, whether watching virtually. So it really goes back to your audience, figuring out who your audience is first, and that's where that drives where to use certain features.
I think that makes so much sense. And it really is I think the theme is really find that balance between who is your audience, what do you want to accomplish, and use the right features. Don't push for new features just because it's shiny, but actually take a step back and think about how they're going to get used and that impact. I would say kind of in sum, one of my biggest takeaways from what you've said as well is think about how much time you have. So address these things early so that you make sure you have enough time to have enough value out of the execution.
Yeah, and that's also something I forgot to mention on the kickoff calls is having that timeline kind of already predetermined, because it's super helpful to, of course, obviously provide that to the client, but keep yourself on track with everything. One thing that I'm starting to do with my role right now is when I create a timeline, a lot of times what I say is that, I always preface it by saying the dates aren't set in stone. And when I send the timeline, I've already kind of worked it out internally that, if I'm selecting April 27th as the deadline for something, I've already given myself a few days. Like I could be May 1st is really when the final day I need it by. But hopefully, setting it a few days in advance, it really kind of pushes them to get it to me sooner. Because of course, on top of setting a timeline, you always want to make sure that you have enough time to review everything, test it. I think app reviews are critical. Always want to make sure that you're testing all the functionality of it, but then you also want to make sure you have enough time to give it to the client team as well so that they can review it. Because, a lot of times when I review, it's more, again, functionality focused. I want to make sure that everything, all the buttons click to where they need to go. It's working the way it's intended. But for the clients, I want to make sure they're looking at the content, reading through, looking at some of those typos that we might have missed, especially if something they provided us. So it's always enough time. It's good to give yourself enough time to do testing, figuring out the features that work. And then I think it does help, again, when you have a timeline in place and you're able to give them access a week or two in advance, they can figure out, that gives them time to start thinking about like, oh, this app is kind of basic. Where can we put some more content into it? Or, we have too much in here. It's a little overstuffed. Where can we kind of trim some of that fat off? So, sorry, went on a little tangent about timelines, but I feel like it's important too. I forgot to mention that earlier. I think timelines are your best friend, because it keeps the attendees on, or the client on track. And one thing I forgot to mention about that, I went on this track and then I went on a tangent. One thing I do now is that when I set the timeline as well, if it is the deadline is May 1st, I'm putting that on my calendar as well, so that even if I don't get that, so that May 1st comes around, if I haven't gotten that content yet, I can follow up then with the client as well and be like, well, hey, just so you know, deadline is today. Am I expecting this, or do we need to push this date back?
I think time, and more time, right? It's always have as much time as possible. And you're right, keeping to that timeline is key. Speaking of time, I think let's kind of think about, certainly want to be able to take questions if we have any from the audience. But as we think about what's next for the event technologist? How do you see the role evolving, or how would you like it to evolve?
Yeah, I think, going back, I think I say that we're kind of like a consultant, but, we're technically not. And I think that's where I see it going, is more of a consultant position where we're the ones that just providing all that expertise as best we can. And I know there's other platforms out there already that, they have people dedicated to building out apps, working on apps for them, but they're also allowing the clients to get involved and learn how to build out those apps themselves. And I think with that, if we kind of shift towards that, where we're having the clients themselves build out the apps, that will allow us more time to be those consultants, and it gives us more time to do demo calls, figure out, just really lead, just become experts in the field of all things event app related. So again, like I said, I think even with the emergence of AI, I think there's always going to be a need for the event technologist, especially on site. So I think for me, it's really just kind of allowing, teaching more people, and that's what we're doing at M&I right now. Is that we're offering what we call tech talks at 10 on Tuesdays. As I know it's a mouthful. We're offering opportunities for myself or somebody else that's on my team that's a little bit more of an expert in something like Hopin or Cvents, Attendee Hub. We're offering times so our team can get on those calls, learn some basic things about the platforms, so that not only are they more knowledgeable when they're on calls with clients, that if we can't be on those, especially those calls before the contract is signed, but also then for them to be experts as well, that they can do simple changes in the app. If I'm pulled away running interactivity on site, somebody from my team can be in there making a quick change to somebody's profile or adding an attendee quick. So to me, it's really just having becoming more knowledgeable in our field and just being more consultant based. And then again, hopefully with the right, we'll see some innovation down the line, of course. But again, I think for now it's really just focusing on what we have and utilizing it to our fullest extent.
That's great advice to wrap with. Really focus on what we have and the innovation will come. So thank you, Jake. I think that's all great advice. And hopefully the audience has learned a bit more about the role, where it's going, what the role can really do for them if they're looking to build out events. I am curious to see if we've got any questions here in the audience. I look around among the bright lights.
Yep. Looks like we have one.
I think we got the one on the screen here is about the, you have any preferred tools and how do you stay up on being an expert? I think you talked a little bit about that earlier.
Yeah. And so for me, at M&I, I'm kind of the spot me expert coming from over there. But, I'm still always interested in knowing and finding out about new technology. And so when I have time, when I have downtime, it's going through the trainings that are available to us. So right now I'm kind of actually working through WebEx events training. I know they were formerly Socio, so I'm going through their training, getting certified in that. That's what I did with Hopin, got Hopin certified as well. So really it's once we find a technology that we're interested in, and I think the event like this has been great. I've gotten a couple of demos scheduled for next week that I can bring to our company as potential opportunities, more technology we can offer to our clients. It's really though just once we have those technologies we identified, going through their training, we always have a rep from those companies that we work with directly as well. So for Spot Me, we have an account manager that gets on calls with us monthly to let us know about those new updates that are coming to the platform, any changes that we need to know, anything that's on our top of our mind, product feedback, or we have some feedback requests. I think we talked about that a little bit ago, where attendees could be like, it would be great if it could do this. And that's something that we always know too. It's like, it would be great if it could do this. And having those calls with the team, the account managers from these different technologies that are available to us, suggesting things to them. So really it's just going through the training, and it's really kind of trial and error at that point. Once you get certified or go through the training of something like that, for me at M&I, my boss will then give me on an event, a simple one, hopefully, where where I just take the lead. Somebody shadows me, and that's what I've been doing a lot right now in my role as the Spot Me expert M&I, is that I'm shadowing a lot of people. They're the lead on it, but I'm in the background doing working sessions with them, making sure they are comfortable with the technology, making sure they know what they're doing, really just helping them out. And then for the second part of that, preferred tools, I think for me, again, it's biased here with Spot Me, but that's kind of the platform, this app platform that I use the most. And then we really utilize internal people as well. So like if I do get assigned something that is using Cvent's event app, I'll reach out to my team, like, who's done this before? Who's done this plenty of, like, is anybody available to jump on a quick call to help me answer some of these questions? So yeah, I think I answered that one.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I think we're out of time. So certainly welcome the audience to connect with you directly for any other follow-up questions. And in the meantime, I think we're between us and potentially cocktails or other networking things going on. So thank you so much, Jake. And thanks everybody here.
Thanks, everyone.